We've had overtime, ejections, injuries, all that are shaping these playoffs. My main takeaway so far, everything's wide open. There's no team that's blown me out of the water, showing me that they're definitely the favorites to win it all. Any of them, well, maybe not any of them, but a lot of them have a really good chance. Starting off, Nets sweep the Sixers, but can Embiid get healthy for the next round? Sounds like he's going to be good to go. We'll see about that. That next round is likely going to be against the Celtics, who seem to be firing on all cylinders, and everyone's healthy as they're looking at a gentleman's sweep of the Hawks. Wolves survived with an OT game that really didn't have the excitement you'd expect from a playoff OT game, but history says that they're already finished. Without Kawhi, seems like the Clippers are cooked, but there's one big stat that might give them some hope. So if you're a Suns fan, that might help you out. The Knicks are just beating on the Cavs right now. We've witnessed two sides of the coin of playoff experience, or playoff inexperience in this case. Playoff history between the Bucks and the Heat continue, but the future is all going to hinge on Giannis and his health. The Knicks are just beating on the Cavs, like I already said that. Lakers rebound after a lackluster game 2, but Memphis might have wished Dillon Brooks actually did get suspended for game 4. Some huge news for game 5 of Kings Warriors with De'Aaron Fox injuring his hand. Will he still play? And if so, will he be the same? So, a bunch of storylines, some stats we're going to go over. Let's get started breaking down these series. Starting off, we've got Sixers and Nets. Obviously, that series already over and done with. The Sixers always seem to be in control throughout that. Obviously, saw some glimpses of greatness from Mikal Bridges. But even without Embiid out, the Sixers close out the series in Game 4. Got a big game from Tobias Harris. The first sweep that they've actually had since 1991. Doc Rivers, however, said that Embiid's MRI isn't great. Sounds like it's about a 1-week injury, so he should be available for the next series. But we'll see. That next series is likely going to be against the Celtics. Next series we're going to talk about Celtics and Hawks. If you've watched it at all, it just doesn't seem like the Hawks are that interested in, or really believe that they have a chance in this series at all. They've been outmatched, obviously. Celtics all-around better team. Hawks have had some glimpses of greatness. Trae Young played really well a few times. But even when they did win, it seems like they've tried to give it away. And all of this comes down to me is just hustle. It really just seems like the Hawks are not playing with that intensity that they need to be able to win this series. In the most recent game, Game 4, there was a play at the end. They were down with about a minute left, with about 8. They were down by about 8 with about a minute left. Clint Capella gets a steal from Jaylen Brown. And it's in that corner, that short corner. He's falling out of bounds, and he throws it back in bounds. He's looking for a teammate. He's got DeJounte Murray right there. But DeJounte Murray doesn't really come forward to the ball. And so Capella ends up throwing it away. Celtics get a layup. They go back up 10 and put the game away right there. That kind of stuff I've seen a lot throughout this series. Maybe it wasn't very possible for them to come back in that situation, but they had been going on a run. So Hawks just seem outmatched. I think they're going to lose this next game, and so Celtics will complete that gentleman's sweep. That next series, though, against Sixers and Celtics, I think is going to be really interesting. Obviously, the health of Embiid is huge. I want to see that matchup between Embiid and Robert Williams. Robert Williams has had his own injury history in the past, but it'll be interesting to see that matchup. And from their previous matchups this season, the one thing I know is that Embiid he's going to show up. He's going to show up. It's going to depend on what everyone else does. Celtics were 3-1 against the Sixers this year. Sixers won the last game. And if you remember, that last game was a pretty interesting one. Embiid ended up scoring 52, shooting 80%. It was one of those crazy games where Celtics came on a big run at the end of the game. Derek White hits a 3 and gets fouled with 2 seconds left. But they actually challenge it, overturn it, Sixers ball. So, with 2 seconds left again, all the Sixers have to do is inbound it, and it's over. The Sixers are up 103-101. Embiid, as he's trying to get the ball on the inbounds play, gets called for an offensive foul where it seems like he hits Grant Williams in the face or something like that. So then it's Celtics ball. Celtics inbound it, get it to Tatum. Tatum misses a game-time fadeaway at the buzzer. So just imagine if that would have gone in. Maybe the Celtics go 4-0 against the Sixers this year. And even before this game, the third game of the season that they played, Tatum, if you remember, hits a game-winning 3 with 1.3 seconds left. Embiid had 41 that night. So Embiid's going to show up, and it's not always going to be the determining factor in whether or not they win or lose. It's going to be everybody else. Now, my biggest question mark is going to be James Harden. Can you trust him? Harden hasn't been to the conference finals since 2018. It really does seem like he's found like a good spot here with the Sixers. He's able to play, and like you've seen glimpses of in this series where he was able to, be himself. He was hitting those step back threes like he used to when he was with the Rockets. So who knows? I just don't know if I can trust him yet. I don't know if there's going to be, some frustration if Marcus Smart is the one that guards him or whatever ends up happening. Who knows? That next series is going to be super interesting, though. I think it's going to be a close one. But ultimately, I think that the Celtics might have the edge here with just having a little bit more experience. Moving on to Nuggets-Wolves. If you saw that very exciting, very thrilling overtime win last night, then you stayed up pretty late. You're very lucky. And if you can't tell, I'm being a little sarcastic about that exciting overtime win. There's a lot of games like that you expect to be really fun in the playoffs, but that just did not entertain. It just didn't seem like a very entertaining game. Nuggets were down 12 with about 2 minutes to go, end up hitting a Jokic 3, and then a Michael Porter Jr. 3, and then another Michael Porter Jr. 3. They ended up forcing overtime, and thankfully they were bailed out by some good shooting and Anthony Edwards finally stepping up. But I think, unfortunately for the Wolves, that they're done. Teams coming back from being down 3 games to none since 1984 are 0 and 109 in those series. They've only forced a Game 7 3 times. Last time that happened, 2003 Western Conference first round, Blazers, Mavs. If you can remember, that was the Jail Blazers. They had Rasheed Wallace. They had Zach Randolph. They still had some Sabonis. They had Scottie Pippen. They had Ruben Patterson, Bonzi Wells, Damon Stoudemire. The Jail Blazers. They came back and forced a Game 7. And Game 7 was close until the Blazers only scored 2 points in the final 3 minutes of the game. So go back and watch that one if you're looking for something to keep you entertained about previous NBA playoffs. But this Wolves team is not the Jail Blazers. If you remember, that's the season where Zebo punched Ruben Patterson, broke his eye socket, and then went into hiding for a couple of days because he was scared that Ruben Patterson was going to shoot him. Now, obviously, there's that big similarity between teammates punching other teammates. Rudy's punch didn't break Kyle Anderson's eye socket, and I don't think that he was really scared of Kyle Anderson coming and shooting him, but who knows? It's just not the same, though. They don't have that same intensity, that same fight that the Jail Blazers had. They were going to beat you up. They were going to fight the whole entire series. The Wolves have played some really good basketball. They just unfortunately have to deal with the McDaniels injury, the Naz Reid injury. Rudy getting suspended a game was a little weird. Cat doesn't I keep expecting there to be like a Cat game where he goes off for 45, and he's had some good games, but he fouled out in overtime, and the Nuggets ended up losing. The Wolves, ended up going on and winning in overtime without Cat. So I just don't see a way that the Nuggets end up losing this series. Obviously, I think it's just a tune-up game for them. People have been kind of putting them on the back burner. Haven't really been talking about them too much because they haven't had the most exciting end to the season, but they're still the number 1 team in the West for a reason. So I think it's just a tune-up game for them for the next series. I think Nuggets win this next game, Game 5, and have a gentleman's sweep. Now, onto another more surprising Western Conference series, Suns-Clippers. News is coming out that Kawhi may play in Game 5. Obviously, we're not going to know until till closer to game time. Ty Lue has said it's a possibility, but that seems a little flimsy to me. If you know Kawhi is going to play if he can play. But if it's not going to be good for him or for his playing career, or there's a chance he might make the injury worse or something like that, I don't think he's going to play. So, my opinion, I don't think Kawhi's playing in Game 5. And even if you have a vintage Russ game where he goes off and goes for a 40-point triple-double or something like that, I don't think it's going to be enough to take on these Suns. Now, if you are a Clippers fan, there's one stat that I think might give you a little bit of hope, but it's still slim. Check out these minutes per game for the Suns, for some of these Suns players. Kevin Durant, 43.75. Devin Booker, 43.5 minutes per game. Chris Paul, 38.75. That's up there for some of these guys. KD, still working his way back from missing a bunch of time this year. He actually went ahead and said, I wish that I could have played the entire 48 because he had missed so much time this season. KD wants to be out there. He wants to play. Now, if those numbers are a little bit alarming, the more minutes that you have to play in these series, more likely you are to get injured, obviously. So if Game 5, say Kawhi comes back, he plays, and keeps this game close, and maybe they win it and push it to Game 6, those minutes for KD and Booker are going to continue to go up. And if there could be an injury. There really could be. There really could be some kind of injury between him or Booker or Chris Paul. We don't know. If that happens, then I think that series completely shifts. But my opinion is Kawhi's going to miss Game 5. I think the Clippers are going to put up a lackluster effort in that game, and the Suns are going to close it out and win by 20 and get the rest that they need for the next series. So, again, just one of those fun series that I really thought was going to go to 7 games, but injuries play a big part of that. I really would have loved to have seen Kawhi and PG at full health against this Suns team. Moving on to a similar series in the East, a series that I thought also would go to 7 games, Cavs-Knicks. The Knicks are just beating the crap out of the Cavs right now. And it's fun to watch. NBA is better when the Knicks are good. But being down 3-1 doesn't bode well for the Cavs. Teams coming back from that have done it 13 times. Nuggets did it twice in 2020. The Warriors did it over the Thunder in 2016. And probably most notably the Cavs over the Warriors in 2016. Not an easy feat to do. This is one of those series that it could potentially happen. But Madison Square Garden is such a difficult place to win that I don't know if the Cavs can win in Game 6. This is the game. The series, to me, the story here is just the difference between that playoff inexperience. There's two sides of that coin. Both teams are fairly inexperienced. Obviously, you have Mitchell and Brunson, who have got some playoff experience and have succeeded and performed well in the playoffs in some respects. But then you have a bunch of players that are starting and playing serious minutes that have little to no experience at all. On the Cavs side, you have Mobley, Isaac Okoro, Darius Garland. This is their first series. You got Karis LeVert and Jarrett Allen that have limited exposure and experience in the playoffs. On the Knicks side, you have players like Josh Hart, Quentin Grimes, Mitchell Robinson, that this is their first series. Isaiah Hartenstein, he's played in a few games, but not really a lot, not very many meaningful minutes. And then you have Randall, RJ Barrett, Quickly, Toppin. They played in one series. They played in 5 games, lost 4 of them. So that's it. 8 players, 24 postseason games combined on the Knicks. There's just this inexperience that is coming into play, and you're seeing the two sides of it. Cavs, their inexperience is coming across as fear, as scared. They're a little bit afraid. They're not quite as aggressive. Kind of feels like they're just continuing to play some regular season games. Whereas the Knicks, the playoffs feed right into their play style and their inexperience. They are tough. They hustle. It's like a rock fight. And when the playoffs start, calls tighten. It gets a lot more physical. And that's what I've seen in this series so far is the Knicks are simply just beating up on the Cavs. So unless we see something change from the Cavs, I think that they're going to have a really tough time coming back and winning this series. I think that game 5 in Cleveland that they can win. I think it's very doable. They can get some of that crowd, can get them in it a little bit, maybe get a big game from Donovan Mitchell, a really big game from Garland, maybe have somebody else stepping up, Mobley stepping up, and the Knicks could just be cold as ice, could be off. But game 6 in Madison Square Garden, I don't know if the Cavs are going to be able to do much about that. I think Brunson will close it out. Brunson could honestly close it out in game 5, and I wouldn't be surprised either. So in this series, I'm going to take the Knicks. It'll be a good experience, though, for the Cavs team. I hope next year they can come back and learn from that and prove to be a little bit more impactful in the postseason next year. Moving on to Bucks Heat. If you haven't heard, Giannis is supposed to be coming back for Game 4. He hurt his back, and this series has been just so weird. Kind of predictable, kind of unpredictable at the same time. Game 2, the Bucks win without Giannis. Game 3, they lose without Giannis. Duncan Robinson has a reappearance and comes back, but regardless, this entire series is going to hinge on Giannis and his ability to come back. Everything changes with him. Their offense obviously runs through him. Without Giannis, the game that the Bucks did win, they had people like Joe Ingles and Pat Connaughton picking up some of the scoring slack on offense, which didn't happen in Game 3. It's really hard to get that consistent play from bench players and role players. Their defense is completely different. In Game 1, when Giannis went out, the Heat just took over inside and hit mid-range bucket after mid-range bucket over Defensive Player of the Year candidate, or finalist, Brook Lopez. Jimmy Butler, Bam Adebayo were just playing inside super well. And with Giannis, it just allows their defense to play a lot different. They can play a lot more aggressive in different areas because he can help erase a lot of things, even though he's not necessarily on the primary ball handler or the best player on the other team. He certainly can, and he can make an impact. Rebounding as well, you don't have to box out. When you don't have to box out Giannis on defense, or on offense, whatever it is, it's going to look a lot different. These two teams have a lot of history. The last 2 times that they've matched up in the playoffs, the winner of that series has gone on to play in the finals. The Bucks won the finals the one time that they advanced, and the Heat ended up losing the finals to the Lakers the one time they advanced. So there's some history there. Neither of these teams are necessarily scared of each other. Heat aren't going to back down just because they're the 8th seed, but it's really going to depend on Giannis and his performance. I think if Giannis comes back and it looks like his normal self, which they were probably being a little extra cautious keeping him out a couple games, so I think he'll be able to come back, be his normal self. They'll win Game 4, even up the series, and then it's just a 3-game series. It's who's going to win on the road. If the Heat are going to win, they're going to have to win on the road. And I don't think that they're going to be able to do it. I think Game 5, I think the Bucks win Game 4. I think back in Milwaukee, they win Game 5. Heat probably win Game 6. And then Game 7, I really, really wish that I could depend on Jimmy Butler, or Clutch Player of the Year candidate, to win in Milwaukee in Game 7. But it just seems like this Heat team is slightly overmatched. Even though they're fearless in a lot of ways, I think the Tyler Hero injury is going to impact them in ways that we haven't quite seen yet. Duncan Robinson maybe takes place of that and keeps his hot streak going, and keeps it up. But I think ultimately this is going to go to 7 games, and I think Bucks are going to win in 7 games. But I wouldn't be surprised if the Heat just continue to punch the Bucks in the mouth and win in 6. Who knows? But my bet is that the Bucks win this in 7. Moving on back to the West to discuss a couple more games. Lakers Grizzlies. After a pretty disappointing showing from Anthony Davis and D'Angelo Russell in Game 2, Game 3 they stepped up and played a little bit better. In Game 2, Anthony Davis went 4 for 14 for 13 points. I think that all stemmed from there was one play where They did a jump ball at half court, and Desmond Bain kept pulling his arm down and ended up inadvertently elbowing him in the face, and Anthony Davis falls to the ground and has some blood on his head. And I think it just kind of, there's just always that one game in a series from Anthony Davis where he just doesn't really show up. He is just, he's not as aggressive, not as competitive, and isn't, so then he doesn't get calls, he doesn't facilitate the offense very well, and everything kind of stagnates. But in game 3, he showed up and went 11 for 24 for 31 points. So I think he is going to be the biggest determining factor in this series, his performance. Now, obviously we got to talk about Dillon Brooks. If I'm a Grizzlies fan, I actually may have hoped that he would have gotten suspended for game 4 tonight. I think there's just something about a distraction like Dillon Brooks when he's not playing as well as he has in the past. He's got some big moments in the past and where he's been able to talk his talk and back it up, but he hasn't done that as much. Getting ejected seemed to be kind of maybe not a fire, but an opportunity for Ja Morant to get a little bit more aggressive. Ja Morant scored 22 straight points in game 3, and that was without Dillon Brooks. So I think if I'm a Grizzlies fan, I kind of wish they would have gotten suspended another game just because you don't want somebody else to poke the bear of LeBron. LeBron hasn't really been, doesn't seem like he's really paying that much attention to it, but if you know LeBron, he obviously knows. He knows what Dillon Brooks is doing, and he knows that he wants to show up Dillon Brooks and beat him. But LeBron's still going to put his team first and make those right decisions and ignore Brooks whenever he can. I think game 4 is going to be a game where the Lakers start off slow. That's just kind of their MO, is they go on runs and they let teams go on runs. They're going to start off slow. I think at halftime, the Grizzlies will be up. But the third quarter, they'll come back and they'll make it close. And then this game's going to come down to the fourth quarter. And the Lakers have a ton of experience in the last few months of playing in close games in the fourth quarter. And they've pulled a lot of those out. A lot of that comes from players like Austin Reeves stepping up. Comes from Anthony Davis getting aggressive at the end, LeBron hitting some big shots, but I expect this game to be close. I would not be surprised if this game goes to overtime tonight. That's just how close that these Lakers like to keep it for some reason. They don't really like to blow teams out. So this game, I think Ja has a decent game again. His hand seems to be okay. Jaren Jackson has a decent game. I could see a big game from Desmond Bain getting started early in the first half and then cooling off. I could see Dillon Brooks going and stepping up, and actually having a big game after he's talked all his talk and he got, ejected, and people were talking about how he could have been suspended, which never should have happened anyways. But ultimately, I think the Lakers are just too much. When Anthony Davis plays aggressively, Jaren Jackson Jr. can't stop him. Xavier Tillman can't stop him. And it opens up things for the rest of the offense. If teams double him, he's good enough that he can, pass it off to someone else. People will crash the boards. But if he's not aggressive and he's passive and he gives the ball up to other people, that's when you see a lot of, D'Angelo Russell taking step backs too early in the shot clock. Or you see, LeBron trying to facilitate and get everybody involved, and he kicks it to Jared Vanderbilt in the corner, who is not necessarily the best three-point shooter on this team. And that's going to let the Grizzlies go on a run and get back in it. So the Lakers need to end this series as soon as possible if they really want to pursue a title or at least go farther in the playoffs, because every minute that Anthony Davis and LeBron James play is another minute that they could be injured, similar to the Suns series with KD and Booker. I think the Lakers end up winning game 4, going up 3-1. They lose a game in Memphis because Memphis is tough to play in, and the Grizzlies are going to fight. They're going to fight. And they come back to LA and win in game 6. That's how I see the rest of that series going. Now, final series, Kings-Warriors. This has been so much fun. If you've watched all of these games, it's just been awesome basketball as far as an entertainment standpoint. Not the best decision-making. You got Steph Curry calling a timeout that they don't have. The Warriors challenged a foul that an illegal screen call on Looney that they shouldn't have challenged. It was clearly a foul, but This has been fun. And going back to kind of that playoff experience and the confidence, there's two sides. There's another couple of aspects to that. The Kings don't have the same kind of experience that the Warriors do, obviously, and they have just this confidence of you don't know what you don't know. You could see that in the first two games. They just came out. They were so pumped to be representing Sacramento, being back in the playoffs for the first time in like what was 13, 16 years, something like that. You could see their excitement. Fox has stepped up and has lived up to the clutch player of the year that he is. But the big news is he broke his hand. If you haven't heard that yet, De'Aaron Fox broke his hand, according to Woj. He fractured the very tip of his left index finger in Game 4. Still hope he will try and play Game 5 on Tuesday. He would need to play with a protective covering on the finger, and he'll be listed as doubtful. That is going to have such a big impact on this. Even after he injured his finger in that game, he still scored 7 points in the final 4.5 minutes. But who knows? Maybe it could have affected him towards the end. There was obviously that play where he kind of seemed to lose the ball, and then he got to Harrison Barnes for the shot at the buzzer. I don't know if it impacted him very much. He still hit a clutch 3 right there. So it could be nothing, but it might affect how he plays. He's averaging 31.5 points, 6 rebounds, 7 assists, 2.5 steals this series. He is the Kings right now. If he can't go, or if he isn't 100%, you're going to need to see more from Sabonis. And Sabonis hasn't showed me necessarily that he's ready to take on that clutch factor and to really step up and lead this team. But he could. He certainly has the capability to do it, certainly has the ability. The other players on the team, Keegan Murray finally stepped up. Who knows? But the other side of the coin is you've got the Warriors, who the first couple of games seemed to be a little overconfident, thought that they were just going to waltz in and take down the Kings, this inexperienced Kings team, but they didn't. Kings fought back. But now you've got the Warriors gaining some confidence. They won a game without Draymond. They won one game with Draymond. So what team's going to buckle first? What's going to give first? Is it going to be the Kings giving into the pressure and start to crumble of being that inexperienced team, and the Warriors go on and beat them in Game 5 in Sacramento? Or is it going to be the Warriors continue to play overconfident and the Kings, with their irrational confidence of and no fear of the Warriors, did they end up winning a game 6 in Golden State? Or can they push it to a game 7? Who knows? I think it's going to be really fun to see. I really hope this series goes to 7 games. Unfortunately, though, for the Kings fans, I think with Fox being out, or doubtful at the very least for Game 5, this Game 5 is huge. It's huge. Sacramento fans need to bring it. They need to bring up the intensity. I think, unfortunately, though, that might be the game where the Warriors win and they go on and win Game 6. It's so hard to win at Chase Center. It's so hard to win. And I think these Warriors are starting to gain a little bit of confidence, and they've done this in the past where they've gone on a streak of winning 4 games in a row. So at the beginning of the playoffs, I predicted the Kings were going to win in 6, but if Fox is hurt at all, I think this is going to go to the Warriors in 6. So another fun, exciting series. Just a quick recap of everything we covered again. Sixers obviously won. Celtics are going to beat the Hawks probably in Game 5. Nuggets are going to beat the Wolves probably in Game 5. Suns are going to beat the Clippers probably in Game 5. Cavs and Knicks. I think Knicks are going to beat the Cavs. Maybe it'll go to 6 games. Bucks and Heat, that's going to be, it could be a coin toss. Could be anything. It's all going to hinge on Giannis. I think the Bucks are going to win in 7 games. Lakers, Grizzlies, I think the Lakers pull it out in 6 games if Anthony Davis continues to show up. And then Kings, Warriors, it's going to hinge on Fox's broken hand. But I think it's going to be a little too much for them to overcome. And I think the Warriors are just going to have that experience, and they're going to win in 6 games. But all I can hope for is some more exciting playoff games. This is the best time of the year. We'll be back in the future with some more breakdowns of the series. We're going to talk about some more stats and stories behind those stats and what that looks like. So follow us on Twitter, follow us on YouTube, make sure to follow us on AMP. All right, thanks for joining, guys. We'll see you later.